This is alternative political analysis, and this video will be on an opinion poll about cannabis in America. And in 9 American states, cannabis use is legal for recreational purposes. In 21 American states, medicinal use of cannabis is legal. And the poll that is the subject of this video was conducted by CBS News, and 61% of Americans support legalization of cannabis, and 88% of Americans support medicinal use of cannabis, and 71% of Americans oppose the crackdown on cannabis from the federal government. 65% of Americans think it is less dangerous than other drugs, and 23% of Americans think legalizing it will increase violent crime. 49% do not think it will affect violent crime, and 22% think it will decrease violent crime, which is probably the most likely outcome. And 69% of Americans think drug abuse should be treated as an addiction and mental health problem, not a criminal offence. Also, 33% of Americans oppose legalization of cannabis. 63% of Republicans support legalization of cannabis. 76%, of Democrats support legalizing cannabis. That's 76% of Democrats. And 72% of people who identify as independents support legalization of cannabis. 53% of Americans think alcohol is more dangerous than cannabis, and they are correct. 28% of Americans think both cannabis and alcohol are dangerous. 9% think neither cannabis nor alcohol are dangerous. That's a strange one, but the strangest opinion yet. 7% of Americans think cannabis is more dangerous than alcohol, and I suspect they must be intoxicated with other intoxicants, let's just say. 76% of American 18-year-olds to 34-year-olds support the legalization of cannabis. 62% of Americans between the age of 35 and 44 support the legalization of cannabis. 62% of Americans aged 45 to 54 support the legalization of cannabis. 60% of Americans aged between 55 and 64 support the legalization of cannabis, and 37% of Americans older than 65 years old support the legalization of cannabis. 50% of Americans have tried cannabis on at least one occasion in their life. 49% of Americans have never tried cannabis. And this poll involved 1,011 Americans polled between April the 11th and April the 15th. And again, this shows support for Tulsi Gabbard's proposed legislation